It's Wednesday, November 8th. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. Prime Minister Andrew Holness wants an end to corporal punishment. At yesterday's sitting of Parliament, he called for a debate on the issue of corporal punishment. Mr. Holness said it must end in both public and private institutions.
I must reiterate the commitment that I gave in this House to ban corporal punishment in all government institutions.
He was speaking in the lower house of Parliament against the background of a United Nations Sustainable Development Goal on good health and well-being, asserting that corporal punishment does not align with that goal.
Without changing the way in which we discipline generally, we really could not be faithful to the SDGs. For example, if you were to look at goal 3, which says good health and well-being. Mr. Speaker, I don't know how corporal punishment aligns with that goal of good health and well-being. I really don't know. And so while it is not a consensus across the aisle or even a consensus within the political parties about banning corporal punishment totally in the country.
3 new members of Parliament were sworn in to the House of Representatives yesterday following last week's by-elections. The first to take the oath was the winning People's National Party member for St. Andrew Southwestern, Dr. Angela Brown Burke. St. Andrew Southern's Mark Golding was next. The Jamaica Labour Party's winner in St. Mary's Southeastern, Dr. Norman Dunn, followed. The new members were warmly welcomed by both sides of the House. The by-elections were held last Monday, October 30. Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett says partnerships are key to the development of the tourism industry. He envisions inclusiveness from the grassroots to the financial authorities around the world as the way forward, and says that's what will happen at the Sustainable Tourism Conference set for the end of November. We have more in this report. The 3-day conference will be held in Montego Bay, St. James, focusing on jobs and inclusive growth for the sustainability and improvement of the sector. Speaking at a recent JIS think tank session, Minister Bartlett said tourism continues to make a significant contribution to Jamaica's GDP, as it provides 30% of the country's retained earnings compared to other sectors scoring 10 to 15%.
We currently have 106,000 jobs directly from tourism and an indirect amount of nearly 300,000, which means 1 in 5 of the workers in Jamaica are related to tourism, directly, indirectly, or induced.
He explained that his call for more inclusiveness speaks to the human element. Public education and training facilities tops the list of priorities in this area. Environmental awareness of the population was also another point.
How do we preserve our ecosystems? How do we enable our water systems and our water processes to be sustainable? How do we ensure that our watershed areas are protected and that we build out the flora and fauna that will keep a strong and viable environment that will enable sustainable development? So this conference has implications then for the areas of academia, for ideas.
In addition to academics, Minister Bartlett said financial authorities and other power players are the key to the overall discussion on jobs and inclusive growth.
The UNWTO and the government of Jamaica, that would represent together the public policy side, the World Bank, the IDB, with their respective affiliate areas, that will represent the financial and the capital side, and then the academic side, the university, George Washington University, which would provide now the base for the whole building out of ideas and innovation and the processes that are going to guide the way forward. So we have a conference that is perhaps the most complete that would have been held anywhere on planet Earth.
The Conference on Jobs and Inclusive Growth Partnerships for Sustainable Tourism will be held between November 27 and November 29. There is a proposal to merge the National Housing Trust, NHT, with the Housing Agency of Jamaica, HAJ. The suggestion was among several recommendations coming out of the Commission's report on the strategic review of the NHT, which was undertaken to improve the efficiency of the entity. The report was handed over to Prime Minister Andrew Holness by the Commission members during a meeting at his offices in Kingston yesterday. Holness, who appointed the Commission in July last year, said the report fits the mandate of the government to improve the NHT's capacity to provide affordable housing solutions for Jamaicans. In regional news, Bermuda's Premier David Burt is defending his island's reputation after hundreds of documents dubbed Paradise Papers were leaked, showing offshore interests of world leaders and international businesses.
Of all the figures named with investments here in Bermuda, the most prominent is the Queen, whom Jeremy Corbyn, the UK opposition leader, suggests should apologise if her private estate invested £10 million of her fortune in offshore funds to avoid paying tax in Britain. While the documents have not shown any illegality, questions are being asked as to whether such transactions are fair or even moral. Premier David Burt, in a recent interview with this station, expressed confidence Bermuda is doing enough to dispel any suggestions the island is a tax haven, a position he reiterated today.
Bermuda is an open, transparent jurisdiction. We have a vigorous regulatory framework. More than 100 tax transparency treaty partners can request and receive information from Bermuda. Bermuda was one of the early countries to join the Base Erosion and Profit Shifting BEPS OECD group known as the Inclusive Framework, which multinationals in Bermuda must report their income on a country-by-country basis.
What's more, Mr. Burt reminds this country has worked hard with some of the world's major economies to guarantee transparency in its financial dealings.
We automatically share information via common reporting standards with tax authorities in 34 countries, including the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany.
Mr. Burt points out, for good measure, the message is constantly being sent that the island does not play fast and loose with ensuring that the rules are followed.
Whenever we receive evidence of wrongdoing, we have the means and the teeth to force compliance based upon our legislation, coupled with strong law enforcement and regulatory cooperation. In the past, we have taken decisive action against individuals or corporations who are non-compliant, and we will continue to do so. Bermuda is not a place to hide money. In fact, you cannot hide money or avoid tax in Bermuda, as tax authorities receive that information in their home countries automatically.
As part of efforts to support Antigua and Barbuda in post-hurricane relief and rebuilding efforts, the government of China on Monday handed over checks amounting to US $55,000. The ambassador said, quote, "Besides the cash aid we are signing today, projects like providing US $2 million in roof building materials under the UNDP framework will soon begin," end quote. China has provided emergency cash and disaster relief goods since Hurricane Irma struck in September. Prime Minister Gaston Brown, in expressing his government's appreciation for the assistance, declared that China had not treated them like, quote, "elegant nuisances," end quote. And those were the local and regional stories. Stay with us. Sports is next. In sports, we open the innings with cricket as the West Indies' three-match T20 tour of Pakistan, originally set for late November-December, is now certain to be postponed due to the non-commitment of the major Windies players for the series and the heavy smog in Lahore. CMC's Nicole Best has the details.
That the series was expected to be postponed because of an issue with smog in the city and the commitment of the leading West Indies players to the ongoing Bangladesh Premier League. According to the PCB source, The weather issue was a serious one, with meteorological officials unable to say when the heavy smog over the city would ease. Smog over Lahore has recently been at its worst, creating visibility issues, especially at night. And with the floodlights at the Gaddafi Stadium having failed once in a match during the World 11 series last September, the PCB believes proceeding with the Windies series in heavy smog could prove problematic. The other reasons identified were the unavailability of several West Indies players since the series scheduled for late November clashes with the BPL, which started last weekend and wraps up December 12th. The likes of T20 captain Carlos Brathwaite, off-spinner Sunil Narayan and batsman Marlon Samuels, Kieran Pollard and Evan Lewis are all playing for various franchises in the T20 tournament. The news of the postponement will be a huge blow for the PCB, as they were using the proposed tour as part of their campaign to have international cricket return to the country after a long break due to the country's volatility.
In football, Jamaica College lifted their third Issa Flow Walker Cup title on Tuesday after securing a 2-1 win over defending champions Kingston College. KC were seemingly set for a record 10th lean on the Walker Cup following their 2-0 win over JC in the Manning Cup quarter-final match on October 21. But that was not to be, as JC dominated the first half, going into the break ahead 2-0. A valiant second-half effort from KC was, however, not enough for the Purples. And that's the news. Stay with us. The weather report is next.
Music is a thing and not a competition. Music is the universal language of mankind.
For proper edutainment, watch Jam Flow, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. with encore